For those of you who don't know me, my name is Abby Tennis. I have the privilege and honor of serving as your lead minister here. And I use she, her pronouns. I'm a white woman with asymmetrical brown and silver hair, wearing a black robe and purple and flowered stole this morning. Hope is not a lottery ticket you can sit on the sofa and clutch, feeling lucky, writes author and activist Rebecca Solnit in her book, Hope in the Dark. It is an axe you break down doors with in an emergency. Hope should shove you out the door because it should take everything you have to steer the future away from endless war and from the annihilation of the earth's treasures and the grinding down of the poor and the marginal. To hope is to give yourself to the future. And that commitment to the future is what makes the present inhabitable. To hope is to give yourself to the future, and that commitment to the future is what makes the now inhabitable. Hope is not our lottery ticket, writes Solnit. It is an axe. It was simpler to feel hopeful when I was young, I think. As a child, I don't think there was much of a difference between hope and fantasy for me. Or maybe it was hope and optimism or hope and wishing. I felt when it seemed like a feeling that I felt when the thing I wanted seemed possible. Hope was a two-dimensional thing, a thin thing when I was a child. Hope was the way, do you remember that Dusty Springfield song, Wishin' and Hopin'? Some of you remember that, wishing and hoping and thinking and praying. Hope was a feeling, something you did by yourself with a smile on your face in your own head when you imagined the future. And now I had a fairly privileged life as a child. I was a white, middle-class, able-bodied kid in the United States with a loving family. And I wasn't bombarded from every direction with the message that my life would never amount to anything, or that I was worthless, or that the oppression I faced was insurmountable. I didn't understand yet the ways that sexism and homophobia might limit my life. And that oblivion certainly played a role in my sense that hope was a feeling or a private action that wasn't too different from wishing and praying, thinking and planning. As I grew older, I began to understand better how horrific and deep-rooted some of the problems in the world and in our daily human lives were, and how inadequate my childhood style of wishing and hoping and thinking and praying, that kind of hope, how inadequate that hope was. But I didn't know how to hope when I wasn't feeling optimistic. I didn't know how to hope when I wasn't feeling optimistic. So how's all of your optimism doing today? Are we all feeling good about climate change and violence in the Middle East, global poverty? How about educational equity and political integrity and the right to bodily autonomy in this here country? Is everyone here's health getting better instead of worse? Are all of the conflicts and animosities with our loved ones moving towards resolution easily and smoothly? Is it looking like we're all about to have the right amount of money that we need, both to meet our own needs and share with our neighbors? I know that there are moments when I feel optimistic. There are certain things that I feel like are going well, things I see are getting better, reasons to believe tomorrow might be a better day. There's nothing wrong with optimism when you genuinely are able to find it. But much of the time, I can't look clear-eyed at the magnitude of the problems in the world and the vastness of the challenges that face us all and just feel like everything's going to be all right. And so where then, my friends, can we find hope? I shared a quote from playwright and novelist and activist James Baldwin a couple of weeks ago, and I want to share it again today. When Welsh TV broadcaster Mavis Nicholson interviewed Baldwin back in 1987, she asked him, "Are you still in despair about the world?" And he responded, "I've never been in despair about the world. I've been enraged by it. I don't think I'm in despair. I can't afford despair. I can't tell my nephew, my niece, you can't tell the children there's no hope. You can't tell the children there's no hope." And so most of you knew before this morning, if you did not know by these screeches of my 8-month-old, that I'm a parent to 2 small children, an almost 3-year-old and a little one, which inherently means that I'm up a lot in the middle of the night. My sweet baby Robin will begin to snuffle and make noises like a little mourning dove in the middle of the night, and I will pull myself upright and put on my slippers and walk down the hall, and I will lift her soft, warm, hungry little body into my arms. And I sit down on the chair in the kids' room, and I try to be as quiet as possible so I don't wake my other child. And I tuck her into the crook of my arm, and I nurse her as we rock back and forth. She relaxes immediately once she's able to have some milk. And she'll wrap her little hand around my thumb, and sometimes she hums happily until she fills up and drifts back to sleep. Sometimes Nova, my older child, will also talk in his sleep when I'm in there. And though his voice is sometimes clearly upset as if he is having a very bad dream, the words that he will yell out are things like, "2 cookies." Or "my turn." The way I interpret that is that the magnitude of Nova's nightmares at this point in his life, thank God, are anger that we will only let him have 1 cookie and not 2 cookies, or that he is playing and someone has a toy that he wants to have a turn with. In the nights when I'm in the mood to sabotage the remainder of my sleep, which is some nights, I sometimes will read the news on my phone while I rock my soft dumpling of a baby back to sleep. And here she comes now. Thanks, Mom, for demonstrating. My children, who literally dream of milk and cookies, do not yet know about the war I read about while they sleep. And they don't know about gun violence. And they don't know about climate change that will make their future so much different from all of ours and so much different from the generation before all of us. They do not know that their family is not safe everywhere because we are queer. But someday they will know. They will know about violence and disease and environmental devastation, and someday they will understand oppression too. Someday their dreams will be haunted the way mine sometimes are, and I know some of yours are. I am a parent, so I can be enraged, but I cannot afford despair. And my friends, whether you have children in your households or not, you do have children here in your congregation. They just threw their hats at you. And there are children in your community, and so my friends, you too can be enraged, but you can't afford despair. So when the children ask us about all that is wrong in the world, and when they ask us how they can make the world better, we can't tell the children that there's no hope. Reverend Hannah told the story of a child who did not know how he would surmount the impossibly high wall earlier this morning. And so before he even knew how he could make the climb, he threw his hat over the wall. He made sure that he would succeed from the beginning because he could not go home to his mom without that hat that was part of his school uniform. He could not go home without his hat. And we may not know how to find hope within ourselves as we face impossibly high challenges in this world. But we know that we can't tell the children that there is no hope. We can't go home without our hat. And so whether we feel optimistic or not, we must find that hope all the same. Because we have to do it. We have to do it for our children. We have to do it for each other. And we have to do it to survive ourselves. And it has to be hope we actually believe in, because we all know that kids know when you are not being upfront with them. We have to believe it. And we have to say it in that voice of love, because the caregiver's voice will one day become the inner voice of the child, we are told. And so we must share hope with our children constantly with full conviction and full love, so that one day when we are not there with them anymore, the inner voice that they hear with the resonance of our own will still tell them that there is hope to be found. Our mission is to plant ourselves at the gate of hope, wrote my colleague, Reverend Victoria Safford, from our reading this morning. A different, sometimes lonely place, she writes, a place of truth-telling about your soul, first of all, and its condition, the place of resistance and defiance, this piece of ground from which you see the world both as it is and as it could be, as it will be. The place from which you glimpse not only struggle, but joy in the struggle. The gates of hope are a place of truth-telling about the condition of our own soul, a place of resistance and defiance against all that is oppression and devastation, a place of ground from which you see the world both as it is and as it could be and as it will be. For it is an act of faith to transform seeing the world as it could be into seeing the world as it will be, and to really believe that. To really believe that the world can be better. To believe it enough to convince yourself. To believe it enough to convince the children. And the key, my friends, to finding that kind of hope, not in the promise of victory or the promise of triumph or the fantasy that whatever we want will someday become real, but to find hope in the act of the struggle itself for a better world. We find that real hope in the act of struggle for a better world. Because when we give up the wishing and hoping and thinking and praying kind of hope, when we take up hope as an axe that breaks down doors in an emergency, hope as the push that shoves us out the door so that we can find the others, working to make the world not just into the world as it could be, but the world as it will be, the hope transforms from optimism into a commitment to the future that makes this present inhabitable. Because we know that hurt people sometimes, right? People who are hurt sometimes hurt other people. But what we find when we work for a better world is that, as author Vex King and others have said, healed people also heal other people sometimes. And that safe people shelter other people sometimes, that free people free other people. Because we know that love wins in the end. And so if love hasn't won yet, it's not the end yet. I had the privilege as a child who dreamed of milk and cookies to confuse hope with optimism. But none of us have that privilege once we have awakened to the realities of injustice in this world. And so, my friends, if you too are struggling to feel hope this morning, instead, do hope. Be hope. Throw your hope over the wall and then go and get your hope. Build hope alongside the others that you find when you break on through to the other side, because to hope is to give ourselves to the future. So may you find that your commitment to the future makes today inhabitable. Amen, and blessed be.
Hi, I'm Reverend Hannah Capaldi.
And I'm Reverend Abby Tennis. We are the ministers at the First Unitarian Church of Philadelphia, where our mission is to awaken love and justice in our lives and in the world.
We're so grateful that you watched, and we hope that the sermon connected with your soul.
We also want to invite you to join us for a live worship service every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You can always find the link to that service on our website at www.philauu.org. In these services, you'll hear words like you've just heard, and you also get a chance to greet one another, pray together, sing together, and we even hold a virtual coffee hour after services to get a chance to greet some new and old friends.
If you want to support the mission of this community and you feel moved to give, you can do so by going to the website that Reverend Abby just mentioned. You can find that link below, or you can text 215-709-5095 and follow the prompts to give.
If someone in your life needs to hear these words today, we encourage you to share this video. And again, thank you so much for watching.
We hope to see you soon.